This is not just a love story. It's a story about reclaiming worth in a land that never promised kindness. She stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a worn leather satchel, dust-stained boots, and a heart full of hope. Elena Barnes had traveled halfway across the country, alone, determined, and holding on to a promise written only in ink. A promise of marriage, a new life, a fresh start. The town of Clearwater, Montana was small but loud with life, horses clattering, men shouting, and women rushing by with baskets and babies. But for Elena, it all moved like a dream she hadn't fully entered yet. She stood there for a moment, blinking against the sunlight and the swirling dust. She had never seen land stretch this far or sky this wide. It was beautiful and terrifying. You ever felt that way? Like you're stepping into a life that might not want you back? Then a sharp voice broke her trance. "Miss Barnes?" She turned quickly. Her heart jumped. A tall man with a stiff posture and eyes as cold as the Montana wind was approaching. "Are you Mr. Wilson?" she asked softly, hopefully. He looked her up and down, slowly, harshly, like he was measuring something, and it wasn't adding up. "You don't look like the picture you sent." She blinked. I never sent a picture, only letters." He scoffed, folded his arms. "Well, I expected someone more presentable, someone who wouldn't embarrass me." That moment right there. Have you ever been judged so fast, so cruelly that your words catch in your throat before they even get a chance to speak? People in the street began to slow down. Curious eyes turned toward them. Elena flushed. Embarrassment burned hot in her cheeks, but she tried to speak anyway. "But we agreed." "Agreement's off," he snapped. "Go back to wherever you came from. I don't need a pauper bride." And just like that, he turned and walked away. Gone. No goodbye. No apology. Just silence. And a dozen strangers staring like she was some kind of sideshow. Let's stop right there. How many times have people built entire futures in their heads only to have someone else tear it down with a single sentence? For Elena, this wasn't just rejection. It was public humiliation. It was betrayal wrapped in indifference. But she didn't cry. She could have. Most would. Instead, she stood there, squared her shoulders, and told herself, "I will not fall apart here." That's something, isn't it? The kind of quiet courage most people never even notice. Because in stories like these, and in real life too, it's not always the big, heroic moment that defines you. Sometimes it's just staying upright when everything tries to push you down. So now, she's alone in a frontier town. No money, no home, no husband. But maybe, just maybe, that's not the end of the story. Maybe it's where the real one begins. Because sometimes, what looks like the worst day of your life is really just life tearing away what wasn't meant for you. And if you've ever found yourself starting over from scratch, if you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, then maybe you'll see a little of yourself in Elena Barnes. The dust may have settled around her boots, but something inside her had just begun to rise. Stay with me. This story's only just beginning. The streets of Clearwater were starting to empty as dusk rolled in. Storefronts shut their doors, horses were tied down, and the golden light of day faded into the cold whisper of mountain wind. But for Elena Barnes, the world hadn't quieted. It had closed in. She wandered the town with no direction, each step heavier than the last, her small satchel clutched like a lifeline, but there was no one left to hold on to. No fiancé, no home, no safety net, and maybe worst of all, no plan. Have you ever found yourself in a place like that? Not just lost on a map, but in your own life? No familiar faces, no certainty about tomorrow. Just you and your fear, walking. Side by side, Elena had taken a risk, one bold enough to change her future, but it had backfired so hard she didn't even have a place to sleep. As the sun sank behind the mountains, the cold crept in. Her dress, already dusty from the road, did nothing against the chill in the air. She found a bench at the edge of town and sat down, hands numb, heart aching. The vastness of the frontier stretched before her like a warning. You don't belong here, and maybe she didn't. But the world wasn't about to offer comfort just because she needed it. Then, just as night began to swallow the last light of day, a voice broke the silence. "Need help, miss?" She turned quickly, startled and scared. A man stood a few feet away, tall, rugged, dressed in a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He looked like he'd stepped out of a cattle drive, but his eyes, they were calm, kind, not demanding, not judging, just watching. "I'm fine," she lied, instinctively pulling her satchel closer. The man didn't push, didn't smirk or pry. He simply nodded. "Name's Nathan Blackwood. I've got a ranch just outside town. Ain't safe for a woman to be out here alone. Now, let's pause there for a second, because this is one of those moments that feels small on the outside but carries the weight of everything on the inside. He wasn't flashy. He didn't make promises or preach morals. He just offered something rare, decency, without condition. Elena didn't trust easily. How could she, after what had just happened? But something about Nathan's voice, the way he didn't try to rescue her, just respect her, softened the edge of her fear. "Why would you help me?" she finally asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. His answer was simple. "Because it's the right thing to do." Now, I don't know about you, but in a world where everyone seems to want something in return, where kindness is so often transactional, that kind of answer hits different. Elena agreed to ride with him. She didn't know where the road would lead, but she knew she couldn't keep sitting on that bench waiting for her past to fix itself. The wagon rolled out of town under a blanket of stars. The town's whispers faded behind her. In the quiet, Nathan didn't press for stories. He let the silence speak. And maybe that's what she needed most, someone who didn't demand her pain in exchange for help. When they arrived at the ranch, it wasn't grand. No chandeliers, no sweeping staircase, like in the books she used to read. Just a modest home, worn with time but steady, safe. And for Elena, safety was enough to feel like grace. "You're welcome to stay until you figure things out," Nathan said as he helped her down. She looked at him then, really looked, and, for the first time in days, the tension in her shoulders eased. Not because someone had come to save her, but because someone had seen her and not walked away. Have you ever had someone do that for you? Someone who didn't fix your world, but gave you the space to start rebuilding it yourself? This wasn't a love story. Not yet. It was a story of survival, of dignity, of the kind of kindness that asks nothing in return. And sometimes, that's how love begins. Quietly, without fanfare. Just two strangers, under a big sky, daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. But life out here never stays quiet for long. Mornings on the ranch didn't wait for your grief to catch up. The rooster didn't care if your heart was bruised. The cows still needed feeding. The sun still rose. That's what Elena Barnes learned during her first few days at Nathan Blackwood's ranch. And maybe, just maybe, that's what saved her. She started by sweeping the porch. Quiet work, but rhythmic. Then helping gather eggs. Then feeding the horses. No one asked her to. Nathan certainly didn't demand it. But Elena needed to do something. Anything to remind herself she wasn't broken. That she still had use in this world. And maybe you've been there too. In that space between heartbreak and healing, where the only thing that makes sense is movement. Doing something with your hands so your heart has time to breathe. Nathan noticed, of course. He wasn't a man of many words, but he always seemed to show up with the right tools, a gentle correction, or a quiet nod that told her, "You're doing fine. Keep going." He taught her how to muck stalls without ruining her boots, how to check fences for weak spots, how to coax a skittish calf back to the herd. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the life she imagined when she pictured being someone's bride. But it was real, and real started to feel good. There's something about honest work that heals in ways comfort never can. You dig into the earth and somewhere inside yourself something settles, becomes steady, solid. As the days passed, Elena stood a little straighter. She laughed a little easier. She still remembered the sting of Matthew's rejection, but it didn't define her anymore. Out here on this land, her story was becoming hers again. One afternoon, they were sitting under an old oak tree after a long morning of fence repair. Nathan handed her a flask of water, the kind of silence between them that felt full, not empty. "This place," she said, looking out over the hills. "It's beautiful, peaceful. You built something real here." Nathan nodded, eyes distant. "It was my parents. After they passed, I held on to it. Didn't know if I could make it work, but it felt wrong to let it go." That's when she saw it, just for a moment. That same grief she carried, mirrored in his voice. "I lost my parents too," she admitted. "Young, been trying to figure life out ever since." Nathan didn't say anything right away. He didn't need to. Some silences speak louder than words. Finally, he said quietly, "Seems we both know what it means to lose a home." And just like that, a bond was formed. Not out of romance, not yet, but from something deeper. Recognition. You know, people talk a lot about falling in love. But sometimes, before love ever arrives, what we really need is understanding. To be seen, to be known, even just a little. Elena wasn't healed. Not completely. But she was no longer that woman left on a bench at the edge of town. She was strong. She was rebuilding. And she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had something to offer. She wasn't just someone who had been rejected. She was someone who was becoming. And Nathan saw it too. The way she worked without complaining. The way she spoke gently to the animals, like they mattered. The way she kept showing up even when she didn't have to. This wasn't the life she planned. But maybe it was the life she needed. And here's a question for you. Have you ever found your worth in the last place you expected? Not in applause or validation, but in the quiet moments of showing up and being useful, being you. That's where Elena was now. Not just surviving, but slowly, surely, healing. And just when things seemed like they were finally starting to make sense, the past had a way of knocking when you least expect it. Stick around, because what happens next changes everything. It started with a knock. Not the kind you hear every day. Not friendly, not curious. It was firm, intentional. Like whoever stood behind that door believed they had a right to be there. Elena was rinsing vegetables on the back porch when she heard it. And even before she turned, her heart knew. It's him. Matthew Wilson. The man who humiliated her. The man who left her standing in the dust like she was nothing. You ever feel that sudden drop in your chest? Like your body recognizes danger before your mind can catch up? Nathan was already at the front door, hand resting lightly on the handle, body still but alert. When he opened it, there he was. Matthew. Hat low, shoulders squared, voice soaked in entitlement. "I'm looking for a woman," he said. "Name's Elena Whitmore." Nathan didn't flinch. "What's your business with her?" "That's between me and her." Elena stepped forward, her breath caught somewhere between fear and fury. "What do you want, Matthew?" He raised his head, and there it was, that same smugness, like nothing had changed. "Elena," he said, like her name was something he just remembered how to say. "I came to talk. I may have acted rash." She crossed her arms, not just to defend herself, but to keep from shaking. "You made yourself clear back in town. I was upset, people were talking. Said you ran off with a rancher." "Stop." Her voice was sharp, steady. "You humiliated me, in front of everyone. You don't get to show up now and pretend it didn't happen." There was a long silence. The kind that makes time feel heavy. Matthew's eyes flicked around, landing on Nathan, then back to her. "I was wrong. Maybe I let people get in my head, but we can fix this. You still have your things back in town." She stepped in front of the doorway, blocking him from seeing past her. "No," she said. "My things are here now." Let that sit for a second, because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is claim where they stand. Matthew's expression hardened. You'll regret this. Elena didn't flinch. Maybe, but not today. Now, if you've ever had to look someone in the eye and say no, not because you weren't scared, but because you finally knew your worth, then you know what that moment cost her. He turned, boots crunching against the dirt, riding off with more anger than dignity. Nathan closed the door slowly, locking it behind him. He looked at her, eyes steady, voice low. You all right? She nodded, but her hands were trembling. He's not used to hearing no. You stood your ground, Nathan said. Takes guts. Elena let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Then softly, I never want to be that woman again, the one who waits to be chosen. Nathan met her eyes. You're not. You're someone who's learning to choose herself. That line, that's where the shift happens. So many of us have been taught to wait, to be picked, to be good enough for someone else's version of a future. But what if the power isn't in being chosen? What if it's in choosing yourself, even when your voice shakes? Later that evening, they sat on the porch together. The stars had just begun to appear scattered across a darkening sky. Nathan handed her a cup of tea. Warm, steady, familiar. I should have known he'd come, she murmured. Men like him don't like being left behind, Nathan replied. He saw what he threw away. That's not your burden, he said, gently. And in that quiet under the stars, something shifted. Not just the end of fear, but the beginning of resolve. She wasn't running anymore, and she wasn't waiting for someone to define her worth. She already had. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the pieces someone else broke, if you've ever said enough and meant it, then you understand exactly where Elena Barnes stood that night. But the truth is, some men don't take rejection quietly, and storms in the west, they don't always come from the sky. Stick around. The wind's picking up, and the real fight is just ahead. The air changed before the sky did. You ever feel that kind of silence? The kind that makes the birds quiet, the wind restless, like even nature knows something's coming? That's what the morning felt like. Nathan was already out in the fields, checking the fences when Elena stepped onto the porch, a mug of coffee warming her hands. The sky overhead was streaked with bruised clouds. Not just storm clouds, something darker. Storm's coming, Nathan said, not turning. You mean the weather? Elena asked. Or something else? He glanced at her, jaw tight. Both, maybe. And just like that, the peace they'd built felt fragile again. By midday, the first sign arrived. A neighbor, Clay Mercer, rode in hard, his horse lathered, in sweat, face pale beneath a layer of dust. Trouble's coming, he gasped. From town, couple of men, drunk, armed, looking for your girl. Elena felt the chill of dread coil in her chest. They say she ran off from her rightful groom. Said she's holed up with a rancher too soft to know better. Nathan nodded once. It's him. Matthew, Elena whispered. He's not letting it go. Now here's where it shifts. When a person realizes that running isn't safety, it's just postponing the fight. Nathan turned to her, voice calm but firm. Then we make sure he doesn't get what he wants. They moved fast, locked down the barn, brought the livestock in, boarded the windows. Nathan pulled a rifle from behind the hearth, checked it like muscle memory, then handed Elena a smaller pistol. She looked at it, her hands trembling. I've never shot a man. I hope you won't have to, he said, eyes steady. But if it comes to it, don't think. Just protect yourself. The hours dragged as thunder rolled in like distant war drums. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, pounding the roof in heavy waves. The lanterns flickered inside the house. The storm outside had arrived, but the real one was still coming. They waited. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind, every flicker of shadow made Elena jump. She sat near the window, pistol in her lap, breath short and shallow. And then, they heard it. Hoofbeats. Slow. Measured. Cruel. Nathan moved to the door, peered through the slats. 3 of them, he said. One's him. And even through the storm, she saw it in Nathan's eyes. Resolve, not fear. Resolve. Come out, Nathan. Matthew's voice slithered through the dark. We just want to talk. Nathan opened the door just enough for his voice to carry. You're trespassing. Leave before you do something stupid. You're protecting a liar, Matthew shouted. A woman who humiliated me. What kind of man does that? That's when Elena stood. Rain lashed against the open door as she stepped beside Nathan. Her voice, clear and fierce, cut through the storm like lightning. A better man than you'll ever be. Matthew's face twisted in the dark. Then you've chosen your fate. He raised his rifle. But the first shot didn't come from him. It came from Nathan. Gunfire exploded across the ranch. Chaos erupted. Mud. Smoke. Flashes of light. Nathan moved like a shadow, firing with precision. Elena ducked behind the doorway, returning fire when he called position. She didn't think. She just acted. Survived. One rider screamed. Another fell silent. And then, just like that, it was over. Rain still fell. The wind still howled. But the fight had passed. Nathan stepped into the yard, boots sloshing in the mud. They're gone, he said. Elena stepped outside too, rain soaking her through, pistol still in hand. One horse had bolted. The others were gone, hooves leaving chaos behind. Are you hurt? Nathan asked. No, she said, voice quiet. But I think part of me changed tonight. He looked at her, really looked. You didn't run. I'm done running, she whispered. Let the storms come. And there, under that angry sky in the aftermath of gunpowder and thunder, 2 people stood together, not just as survivors, but as something stronger. You see, sometimes the storm doesn't come to break you. Sometimes it comes to reveal you, and after that night, Elena Barnes wasn't the same woman who got off that stagecoach. She was someone who had stood her ground, protected what mattered, chosen herself, again. But peace, out here in the West, doesn't always last. And sometimes, even after the thunder fades, the past still finds its way back. Stick around. The winds aren't done shifting yet. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered, in the puddles scattered across the yard, in the cracked boards that needed mending, and in the smoky scent of gunpowder that clung to the porch like an old memory refusing to fade. Elena sat wrapped in a wool blanket, Nathan's old one, watching the sun rise through a silver haze. Her hair still damp, her face pale but calm. Something inside her had shifted, not just because she'd survived the night, but because she had fought through it. You know that moment after chaos when everything finally slows down, and you're left staring at the person you've become? That was Elena. She wasn't just the woman who had once waited for a man to choose her. She wasn't the broken bride who'd been left in the middle of a dusty town square. She had stood her ground. She had drawn a line. And for the first time in her life, she had chosen herself. Nathan stepped outside with 2 mugs of coffee, sat beside her without saying a word. He didn't need to. Sometimes the silence says everything. Respect, solidarity, something like peace. He'll come back, she said eventually, voice steady. Men like him don't take defeat quietly. Nathan nodded slowly. Maybe, but next time, he won't find you alone. And that, right there, is what changed everything. Because love, real love, isn't just about passion or promises. It's about knowing someone will stand beside you when it matters, when it's hard, when it hurts. From that day on, life moved forward in quiet rhythms. Elena helped Nathan fix the broken fence. She watered the horses, fed the chickens, swept the porch clean of storm debris. Every task, every sunrise became part of something she never thought she'd have again. A life that felt like hers. And the town began to notice. At first there were glances, curious, unsure. But over time, they softened. The grocer began to wave. A neighbor brought eggs. A child from town gave her a flower without being asked. They weren't just tolerating her. They were welcoming her. Isn't that one of the most powerful things we can offer each other? Not rescue, not pity, but belonging. There's a quiet kind of healing that comes when people stop seeing you as a stranger and start seeing you as part of their own. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and fireflies lit up the tall grass, Nathan took her to a small overgrown garden behind the barn. "My mother's," he said simply. She used to grow herbs, tomatoes, some wildflowers. Elena knelt beside the dried soil. Her fingers brushed away the weeds like she was touching something sacred. "Mind if I bring it back?" Nathan smiled. "I was hoping you'd ask." And just like that, a new chapter began. Not loud, not dramatic. Just two people choosing to build something out of what was broken. That's what courage really looks like. It's not always the showdown in the rain. Sometimes it's picking up a shovel the next morning and planting something that might take years to bloom. Elena didn't become someone else. She became more herself than she'd ever been allowed to be. She found strength not by avoiding pain, but by walking straight through it. She found peace not in isolation, but in connection, honest, imperfect, real. And maybe that's what this whole journey was about. Not just escaping the past, but proving she was never just the sum of who left her. So let me ask you, have you ever looked at your own scars, not with shame, but with pride? Because they don't mean you were broken, they mean you endured. And just like Elena, maybe you're not waiting for someone to choose you anymore. Maybe finally, you're choosing you. The West is full of stories, of heartbreak, of grit, of rebirth. But this one is about a woman who lost everything and found herself. And the best part? Her story isn't over yet. So stick around. There's still land to plant, still hearts to heal, and still sunrises ahead. There's something sacred about turning soil. It's not just about planting seeds, it's about believing, sometimes against all odds, that something will grow again. That even after fire, after storms, after loss, life still finds a way to come back. Elena knelt in the small, overgrown patch of earth behind the house. The garden used to belong to Nathan's mother, once filled with herbs, tomatoes, and wildflowers. Now it was mostly weeds and silence. But Elena didn't see what was gone. She saw what could be. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the beginning, not the storm, but this moment, where a woman who was once left behind chose to stay, to plant, to rebuild. Have you ever done that? Have you ever looked at something broken, not as the end, but as the start of something new? That's where we find her now. Her hands calloused from ranch work, her heart stronger than she ever imagined. It could be, not because someone rescued her, but because she rescued herself. Matthew never came back. Whether it was fear, shame, or something else that kept him away, Elena never gave him a second thought. She didn't wait by the window, didn't look over her shoulder. She had walked through the worst of him and came out the other side whole, and Nathan? He never tried to be a hero. He never made grand speeches or asked for anything in return. But every day, in a dozen quiet ways, he stood by her. He helped fix the chicken coop. He brought her coffee without asking. He gave her space, and then gently filled it, with presence, with patience, with real partnership. Their love didn't explode like wildfire. It grew like roots in good soil, steady, deep, unshakable. Together, they didn't build a fairy tale. They built a home. One that smelled like fresh bread and pine wood. One where evenings were spent watching the sun melt behind the hills, and mornings began with the sound of chickens and a shared smile. And the town? Well, by now, no one questioned Elena's place there. She was part of the rhythm. She brought extra eggs to the schoolhouse, helped deliver a calf during a neighbor's emergency. The children knew her name. The elders respected her grit. She belonged, not because she tried to fit in, but because she stood firm in who she was. You see, out here in the West, strength doesn't always ride in on a horse with guns blazing. Sometimes it walks barefoot into a garden, digs its fingers into the dirt and says, "I'm not done yet." And that's the legacy Elena chose. Not bitterness, not revenge, but growth, faith, and love built on shared ground. So if you're watching this right now, maybe you've been through your own kind of storm. Maybe you've been left, rejected. Maybe you've had to start over with nothing but your hands and your hope. Let this be your reminder. You are not what broke you. You are what you plant after. Elena's story is about more than survival. It's about the quiet revolution of choosing to believe in yourself, even when no one else does. It's about turning pain into power, loss into life, and a stranger's kindness into a love that lasts. And maybe, just maybe, it's a reminder that home isn't a place. It's the people who show up, the soil you choose to work, the life you decide to build on your terms. So keep planting, keep showing up, and when the wind settles and the sky clears, you might just find that everything you've been searching for was waiting on the other side of courage. Thank you for riding through this journey with us. And if this story touched something inside you, share it. Pass it on. Because somewhere out there, someone else is standing in the storm, and they need to hear that hope is still real. If Elena's journey spoke to something in you, don't just keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories that matter.